Hi, welcome to Let's Talk Centerville. I'm Maureen Russell Hodson, and I'm delighted about our guest today. Martha Boice is a longtime advocate for the preservation of older buildings in Centerville. Her efforts have led to a greater public awareness of our community's history and historic architecture. Her list of achievements is long. In fact, we were saying before we started, longer than 30 minutes, but we're going to try to get it all in if we can. To name a few, she has served as an advisor to the committee that established the Architectural Preservation District in downtown Centerville. She also helped make that area the first in Montgomery County as on the National Register, right?
Right.
Which is an exciting thing we just found out. She was a founding member of the Landmarks Foundation of Centerville and Washington Township, and most recently, she led the effort to get the Centerville home of the late writer and humorist Erma Bombeck registered on the National Register, and she was a guest for that as well. Along with Martha this afternoon is Patrick Hansford, who is also from the Landmarks Foundation of Centerville-Washington Township, and I'm going to say probably your #1 cheerleader, although I know you have a lot. So I'm delighted to have you both here. It's Martha Boice and Patrick Hansford, and thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
We also will talk too, because you've been recognized, Martha, by the state of Ohio not once but twice in the last few weeks here with some preservation awards. But before we get to all of that, we have to ask you this preservation and historic buildings and on and on and on. How did all of this start for you?
Well, our family moved and we were from Toledo, and we moved to what's called the Old West End in Toledo. And it's similar to Oakwood or Dayton View, with nice historic homes where the industrialists lived. And I remember one Sunday when my dad and I walked to church together, and he taught me the Greek orders of architecture from the pillars in all those buildings. And then in the 60s, I took a class at the Toledo Museum of Art. The woman in charge was just a brilliant teacher, and she would have an hour of furniture examination by periods, and then she would, in the second hour, show the houses that accommodated that furniture. And when we moved to Washington Township in 1968 and the leaves fell off the trees, I began to see these wonderful early houses. And all that information came rolling back. And it just started. The National Register and the Ohio Historic Preservation Office had just been set up in 1966.
Okay.
Its 50th year is this year. And we could hardly get a sheet of paper from anybody with the rules and regulations for sending in an application.
But you just, something about seeing those buildings made you feel like, I need to save these buildings, or we need to make sure people know about these buildings?
That's right. We would lose some every year. Some important buildings would be destroyed when some area would be developed.
Some people call that progress, but obviously it's not in many ways, right? I mean,
that's right.
You want to see these buildings preserved and really restored to what they would have been originally.
Right. Our committee wrote, I was in charge of the Landmark Committee for the Historical Society for many years, and we wrote a sense of place, dividing or seeing which houses were still here from an 1875 map. And a lot of them had been lost, but we documented, what was around, and that was the reason we did that, the losses.
And you have done incredible work, and I know, Patrick, you are truly admire her work, and so this goes back, I think you were saying, like around 25 years ago?
Yeah, Martha's never heard this story. But back in 1992, 93, I was working for Wolpert at the time, and a gentleman that worked there was very involved with the American Institute of Architects, like I was, and he wanted to create this new award called the Patrons Award. So I had quite an argument with him and passed out an article from the Harvard Architectural Review, and it was about clients versus patrons. And I said, all you architects just want to do is give awards to your clients. Let me tell you what a real patron is. And then I explained what Martha had been doing for the last, at that time, 30 years. And now here we are, it's been 50 years. So that award never got created, I think, because I throw such a stink of what a real patron of architecture is. Eventually I get onto the Landmarks Foundation, and probably for the last 5 years I've been talking with our board, we need to do something here, and how do we do this? Again, I went back to the Dayton IIA and had mentioned to them, you know, do you have a preservation award? Do you have anything to recognize citizens? And this same person said, well, we support preservation. I said, that's great. Will you, let me submit something on Martha, and that never went anywhere. So out of anger and tenacity, we decided that we would just go submit something at the State Preservation Office. The thing with the Preservation Office is they really kind of look at projects and not necessarily like a body of work. Or they'll look like, well, you wrote a book or something. So
and she is completely a body of work. I mean,
yeah,
we are talking 50
exactly.
years
So
of
I
many
actually
projects.
contacted the Preservation Office and talked with them for a while, and I said, I think we can do this. And eventually we hired Nathalie Wright, who helped us write the applications for the State Historic Preservation Office. And then on Nathalie's suggestion, we also submitted for the Heritage Ohio. And along the way, I've had different people kind of helping out. Bob Daly helped write a biography of Martha so that we could get sort of some guidelines. But when we first met with Martha a couple years ago, Bob and I, Martha comes in with this box, this file box. She goes, I got a couple more at home. And I'm like, this is going to be a bigger task than I thought. But we got through it and filed these nominations this year, and we're really excited to find out that
Yeah,
Martha
please
was,
announce it. She's
Martha, on October 5th, Martha was recognized as Heritage Ohio's Preservation Hero, which is an award presented to an individual, organization, or a business that's shown outstanding leadership in revitalizing and preserving Ohio communities. And then this past Saturday, October 29th, the State Historic Preservation Office recognized Martha for Public Education and Awareness Award, which is for increasing interest in historic preservation. Those activities include media, newsletter publications, interpretations, original research, educational programs, special events, and I can tell you that Martha's probably done all of those,
Yeah.
which we'll go through. So, and both of those are statewide organizations. Heritage Ohio is, they're the official Historic Preservation and Main Street organization, while the State Historic Preservation Office is actually part of the State of Ohio and Ohio History Connection.
unbelievable. Congratulations to you. I mean, 2 statewide
you.
awards. I know back when you were starting your interest, you never thought, oh, in 50 years I'm going to be recognized for this, because you all
Right.
just kind of go from one project to the other, right?
That's right.
You see something, and what compels you to think, I need to help work on this building?
Well, I started to go to zoning meetings early in my career, and I noticed that the city or the township presented a plan, and they showed a site, and then the developer came and they gave their slideshow, and usually it didn't include the house. If there were a farmhouse on that property, it was all gone by the time the developers got to it. And I felt like, who speaks for the house? And so I started to do that. I learned how to look up deeds and auditors' records and date houses. That's my favorite activity.
Doing the research part
Right.
of it. Okay.
People don't ask me how I am, they say, what's your project?
Do you have a project that you're working on right now?
Yes.
Of course. Well, you have to tell us what that is, if you can.
I get after the township, Washington Township, and tell them that they should have some kind of a setup for protecting their historic buildings. They have home rule, and they could do it. And they say, well, we don't have a list. Well, I have a notebook about this
She's going to make a
thick,
list. Yeah.
and it's
You've
going
made
to
the
have
list.
all the houses that are at least 50 years old and interesting historically.
I think people take for granted, if you've lived here You drive past these homesteads, these stone buildings, and you just don't realize the significance that they mean to our community.
We have a lot of different buildings in our area.
Yeah, not just stone houses, I guess.
Right.
but yeah.
We have a Frank Lloyd Wright doctor's building, and that's the only business building that Frank Lloyd Wright designed in Ohio. The only one. And what's the name of the metal house on West Franklin?
We have a Lestron house.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You know, and those were built actually in Columbus after the war as affordable housing. And there's only 1,296 of them that were made, and only
I forget all
there-
this.
Yeah, I mean,
A small number, but we have one of them.
we have
Right.
one of them.
Centerville.
Yeah.
And tell us what the Landmarks Foundation is, Patrick, because that might be something too that we need to educate folks about.
Well, what we do is we're a 501c nonprofit organization, and we want to help educate people on historic properties. We want to help them learn how to maintain those properties and to care for those properties and have an appreciation for things. And at times we as Martha says, we'll speak up and at a city or a township meeting to what these buildings are and why they should be saved.
Well, let's kind of do a lightning round because I know there are so many projects here, but we did want to talk about the Architectural Preservation District, downtown Centerville. You were involved in a couple of ways with that.
Primarily, I advised the mayor and a couple of other people of books that might be helpful to say, well, you can, base your decisions on these books. And Mayor Hoy got a little group together, and he was the one that really wanted to see this happen. And then I was more involved with the National Register District, and that's a smaller district than the city's Architectural Preservation District. And we had a architect from Cincinnati help us with that application when we finally got a piece of paper that had things
So
to
you're talking
fill
about like
in.
the late 60s, early 70s maybe?
That it would have been the early 70s.
Early 70s?
I think it got in 72. And we gathered up history of all the houses and decided where to make the district boundaries. The preservation office asked us to take more photographs of the outside of the district to see what that looked like. And at that time, you couldn't have more than 25% of the buildings in a district non-contributing. That means they were just a nice house that somebody put up or a
Okay.
garage that didn't have much significance. But we left out a couple of the stone buildings because we didn't want to go over that 25% with the dry cleaners and other people who didn't have a stone building or an early building.
And so it's significant also because it's the first in Montgomery County on the National Register.
That's right. Oregon always feels like they were first, but they have to say they were first in Dayton. We were first in Montgomery County.
Check and check, right? That's terrific. Okay, and let's also talk about, let me see, I think we have a photo of you as an author. You're also a published author. You mentioned A Sense of Place. You've written a second book as well, but how did A Sense of Place come about?
We were worried that we were losing buildings every year. There was a stone building on 725 that would belong to the Meade family, and I never even got through it. And it wasn't in the plans for their development, and it's gone. And this happened each year, and it worried us. After a while, you don't have anything left.
Mm-hmm. So you documented all of that in the book called A Sense of Place, which is still available today, right?
It's been reprinted, right, with color photographs and very
We've
nice.
updated it. We've added, Alan Schwab, who's also on the foundation,
Yeah.
added some buildings and provided that to the Historical Society.
And you can pick that up at Centerville-Washington History, right?
Right, correct.
Okay, so you can go to the Asheville Wright House or pick up that book, because it really is truly is a history of our community.
Right.
Through the buildings. And you actually traveled the route that Aaron Nutt and Benjamin Robbins, who are founders of Centerville, right?
That's right.
What in the world would possess you to do something like that?
My husband wondered that too. I used to have to call him every evening to tell him where I was and what my phone number was. But I belong to the Vernacular Architecture Forum, and I asked different people to help me find the stone buildings or early buildings belonging to the Nutt family, the Robbins, and so on. They were the first settlers in this area. And they started out in New Jersey. And I found houses that belonged to Aaron Nutt's mother's family, Shreve, and went out and visited them.
That's
and I looked
incredible.
up deeds in the, recorder's office. And then I went on to, I stayed at Winterthur one night, and this nice professor at one of the colleges out there took me during his vacation time to a 3-state area and showed me different Welch houses. We were trying to see if our collection were Welch in design. And at that time, all roads led back to Wales as far as the ancestry of these people. And then it turned out that there were more from England, of the Nutt family. They did some more research, and found out that they weren't from Wales. So our theory sort of wiggled right there. But there were still people from Wales, Hatfields and the Robbins family. So I went through Pennsylvania, and I found double-doored houses and, a lot of the things that we have here. And then a woman in Kentucky who was with the Bluegrass Foundation helped me. She drew maps for me of where these different houses were. And only once did I get my exit blocked by some grandson who resented the fact that I was at Grandma's house and I hadn't been invited. So, this path of migration was really absorbing to me.
And people can go, and you can still tour the stone houses. I mean, there's information about all of the different architecture with the Historical Society, right?
And that's the interesting thing that Martha was doing. There was academic research that had been done, and she basically did her own academic research where you can take vernacular styles of architecture and you can trace how those different nationalities with their style of architecture would migrate across the United States and into the Ohio Valley. And basically Martha did that for our stone houses.
Well, thank you for so many things, but thank you for doing that as well. We also, you led the effort for historic markers on Mad River Road, which
Right.
I didn't realize that, the last part of the railroad that connected Dayton to Cincinnati, right? Is that right?
It was the road, yeah, Mad River Road. And Terry McConville was on the group that did a sense of place, and he was always fascinated by the roads. And he got that survey from the engineer's office in Hamilton County. He networked with them, and they found this and sent it to him. And he would draw out these maps on a piece of paper, and he'd put all the dots on the paper and then get them together. And he discovered another section of Mad River south of this, too, in one of the communities. But that turned out to be the road that people took coming up from what's called Cunningham Station, which is an outpost in Cincinnati. That's where the road started. And then it went to the mouth of the Mad River, which is downtown. in Dayton. The Mad River ends there. So that was the layout of the road. And we tried to get it into the National Register to protect it. And it was actually the same width as it was in that survey. But they came out and looked, and there weren't any beautiful little stone wells or bridges, you know, any artifacts that would identify it as an old road. So second idea was the markers.
Markers, okay. Well, that's wonderful. And you're not one to rest on your laurels, because just maybe last year you'd been working for, I don't know how long, to get the Erma Bombeck house also on the National Register, which you were successful at.
Right. Projects are usually 2 years.
Okay. What
On
was it about?
average.
But you had been a lifelong admirer
Right.
of Erma Bombeck, right?
Right. When she moved to Bellbrook after she was on Cushwa Drive in Centerville, just for a couple of years, and then she went out to Arizona because she fell in love with it out there. She talked to everybody in the family to locate there. And when she left, she did a talk for the YWCA, which had been a favorite organization of hers. And I went down to hear her. It was like $25. This was in '71.
Oh,
And
that's a lot of money.
there were 8 of us, all women, sitting around this round table. And we introduced ourselves, and everybody had left their husbands at home with their kids, and they had come down to enjoy Erma Bombeck.
I bet it was worth it too, wasn't
Oh,
it?
yes.
So
And-
now her home is on the National Register. And
Right.
that's not something that you just snap your fingers and make happen. That's a lot of work.
Right, and we hired this Nathalie Wright to do the application. It helps to have somebody professional now to do your application. When we did the National Register one for Centerville, it was new, a new program, and they didn't have so many rules and regulations. But now somebody has to really know how to approach it, and she did a beautiful job and got it right through. She knew, and they told her that she, in the summertime, she had to write more about Erma Bombeck's role in women's affairs in the '60s. That was, you know, big news then. And so she wrote another section. She kept working on it till it was well done.
And the Bombecks were really pleased with that
Oh,
designation
yes.
as well, right?
They wrote emails back and forth, and they didn't know how their mother would take it, you know, whether it would be a big joke to her or what. But
Because she wrote a lot of her columns from that
Yeah.
house.
That's where she started,
Right.
in that little house.
she had a setup of 4x4 posts that her husband had made, and a large piece of wood supported by those, and it was immediately by her bed. And she could put her legs over the side of the bed and be at her desk. And that's where she started to write her columns. You know, if she had a great idea in the middle of the night, she was right there.
Right there, ready to get working on it. Well, and I think our community really feels the same about Martha. She is truly a treasure here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that the reason that the community looks like it is today is because of the efforts that Martha and the people that have worked with her and joined her efforts are what it is. When you look at Create the Vision, which was the sort of comprehensive plan developed by the city and the township, the one thing that the citizens said is, we like the historic character of the community, we like how the open space, we like the historic buildings, and that drives your zoning, that drives what people want to live in. And I think we have to turn back and say, well, it's because of the efforts that Martha was making 40, 50 years ago that set all that in motion. We were talking before the show about like the Stagecoach Inn, which was a large building right at the intersection of Main and Franklin that got torn down, and that was a big impetus to get people to, wait a minute, our community is being torn down. I always tell people when I meet them here in town, people don't realize, but in 1950, Centerville was a farm village of 400 people, you know, and now it's 30,000 people. But but everybody likes and enjoys that
Right.
that small center of town.
It also shows you that
Right.
one person can truly make a difference. And you probably weren't thinking at the time that you were breaking the rules and kind of making your own way, but you really were.
I'd been taught that, you know, that one person can make a difference for many, many years. You know, don't give up and keep going.
And so you've had, I mean, we haven't even been able to talk about some of the other projects, but I mean, when you look at all the things that you've done, your life's work, it must be very satisfying for you.
Well, to get all these awards was, this morning my daughter-in-law, who's my main cheerleader, said, "Are you still feeling high today?" And I said, "Still high."
Because it's something within you that really wants to, I mean, you're not from Centerville, but you've really adopted this community as your own.
That's right. It's been a wonderful area to raise your family and have interesting things going on and so forth.
Do you walk downtown Centerville? Do you walk through the Architectural Preservation District or drive out to some of these homes that we've been putting up? There's the Erma cottage.
Sometimes I call an owner, like Don Ackerman, I think has, Don and Edith Ackerman, I should say, has, to me, the nicest stone house in the area. The interior is still intact. And every now and then, if I have a really important guest, I'll call and say, "May I bring so-and-so to see your house?" And if he's not around, we see his garden, which is nice also, and then just, you know, circle the house outside. But he'll often take people through, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great gift for sure.
Well, and that's the key, is that just because the houses are older doesn't mean that you still can't use them, and you know, many of the older homes have been turned into offices or businesses, and so they continue to have a life. You don't have to scrape the earth and start with bad fake architecture. You know, so
Ouch.
yeah, well, I won't name those buildings that are downtown that are that, but that's the thing, is there is value to the buildings, and Martha saw that, and I think we've educated the public that you know, and we have businesses that come downtown to locate downtown because they want to be in those buildings and they want to be part of the AP district.
Yeah. And I know real quickly, you're going to be recognizing her also, the Landmarks Foundation, right?
We're going to have an open house on November 15th at Benham's Grove from 4:30 to 6:30. If you'd like to come, just send me an RSVP. My email is phansford@woh.rr.com, and we'll make sure that you're on the guest list.
For all the wonderful things that you've done. And if somebody wanted to get more information about the buildings or architecture, would it be the Historical Society a good place to go to maybe pick up a book? Sense of Place?
Yeah,
They have files there at 78 North Main Street,
Okay.
the little stone building.
The Aaron
It was
Cottage?
up, yeah.
Right, okay.
And they have family files and house files.
So that's a great suggestion
and-
for anyone to kind of get started on your own history, learn more about
Right.
your own family and history.
They have nice book selection there.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for all your good work for our community. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.